A farmer lost everything until a mysterious stranger revealed 5 seeds that changed his life forever. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the Kansas fields shrouded in shadows, and Joe Mitchell felt the weight of despair crushing him. Bills piled high on his kitchen table, foreclosure notices creeping closer. He could hear his children, Hank and Lily, laughing as they played hide-and-seek among the livestock, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing overhead. But Joe knew. His hands trembled, not from the chill of twilight, but from the sheer terror of failure, the sense that he wasn't just losing a farm, but fracturing the very foundation of his family. Up on the worn fence posts, he perched like a broken bird. "What am I doing wrong?" he muttered under his breath, grappling with an overwhelming mix of anger and sorrow. Memories flooded his mind, nights spent working under the stars, his father's steady hand guiding him through the intricacies of farming, and the pride that came with every successful crop. Yet here he stood, teetering on the brink of losing everything generations had built. As dusk thickened, a figure emerged from the murky distance, an elderly man with hands gnarled by time, his calm gaze like a beacon in the storm of Joe's thoughts. "You look lost, son," the stranger said, his voice steady while Joe's pulse raced. Without hesitation, he extended his hand, revealing 5 seeds, unlike any Joe had ever seen. They glinted under the fading light, as if whispering promises of hope. "Plant these, and they will change everything." Joe hesitated, a rush of skepticism gnawing at him. Could a handful of seeds turn the tide? His brow furrowed. Did he have the stamina for yet another misplaced hope? His heart wrestled with his mind. The desperate need for salvation pulled against the fear of another failure. "I don't know if I can," he murmured, wrestling emotions that twisted inside him like a storm. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With nothing left to lose and an ache in his chest, Joe planted the seeds. The act itself felt like a gamble with destiny. Each represented resilience, gratitude, love, knowledge, and community. Days turned into weeks as he nourished them, though doubt gnawed relentlessly at his insides. Yet when the sprouts broke through the soil, thriving against the odds, it lit a flicker of hope in Joe's heart. As Joe's crops flourished, so too did the allure of wealth. Friends who once offered support now whispered of quick gains and sellouts to corporate farms. The stakes rose, tempting him with visions of a future free from worry, but laced with the fear of losing the very soul of what he held dear. Would this newfound success bring him the peace he craved, or draw him away from the values that grounded him? He looked at Hank and Lily, unaware of the dangerous crossroads before them. Their laughter felt like daggers to his heart. Would he forsake his integrity for a chance to escape struggle? The advancing shadows seemed to swallow his resolve as he fought against the impending tidal wave of temptation. But just as clarity began to settle, a shocking truth about the stranger loomed in the darkness, threatening to unravel everything Joe believed. The path he once envisioned grew murky, and with every heartbeat, he felt hope and despair tightening their grip on him, leaving him teetering at the precipice of a life-altering decision. The morning sun cast long shadows across Joe's farm as he woke to a day that felt different. In his dreams, the seeds had whispered their secrets to him, instilling him with an energy he hadn't felt in years. Yet as he stepped outside, the robust green of his crops served as a harsh reminder that beauty often masked buried tensions. Joe's heart raced with both excitement and dread. Today was the day to confront the stranger's hidden truth, the shadows that loomed over his newfound hope. With each step toward the fields, anticipation coiled tightly in his gut. What secret was the old man hiding? The peculiar shimmer of the seeds was still fresh in his mind. Joe knelt to examine them, tracing the paths of life they had taken against all odds. They flourished despite the droughts, and the weeds that had once choked his soil now lay bowed beneath them. Did they hold something magical, or was it merely faith propelling them? That question echoed louder than ever as the day's tasks awaited him. As noon approached, he decided to pay a visit to Thomas, an old friend who had a knack for knowing things, especially about the stranger who had come to him weeks past. Joe found him by the barn, repairing equipment that had rusted away from neglect. He approached cautiously, weighing each word, knowing full well they were both standing on shaky ground. "Tom, I've planted the seeds," he said, his tone a mix of pride and concern. "But there's more to this. Do you know anything about the man who gave them to me?" Thomas laid down his tools, wiping sweat from his brow. "People talk, Joe. That man's just a ghost to most around here. They say he brings good fortune, but there's always a price." The weight of those words pressed down on Joe's chest. The promise of fortune was entwined with risks he couldn't yet fathom. "I can't ignore it," Joe replied, forcing confidence into his trembling voice. "This farm is my legacy. I need to know whether I'm signing away my soul for a few good harvests." Tom nodded, sensing the turmoil brewing behind Joe's eyes. "Follow your instincts, Joe. You know the land better than anyone else. If something feels off, don't brush it aside." That night, rest eluded him as the struggle between ambition and morals raged within him. What if he were offered a deal? Quick profits for the soul of his farm. Could he genuinely weigh monetary success against the legacy of integrity passed down through generations? Sitting on his porch, he watched the stars twinkling above, and suddenly an idea struck him. What if he took the time to nurture not just the crops, but the community? Perhaps he could share the prosperity, harnessing that potential for the greater good instead of succumbing to corporate entrapments. The allure of wealth began to shift into something more substantial, solidarity and resilience. But salvation wouldn't come without confrontation. The stranger was a looming presence in his life, like waiting for a storm to break. As Joe steered his thoughts back to his children's laughter, so innocent and unaware of these trials, the resolution crystallized within him. He would face the stranger head-on, demanding truth in exchange for trust. Tomorrow would be pivotal. The seeds had grown, yes, but what lay beneath the surface might be more telling than anything above it. Would confronting the stranger unveil the depth of his own commitment to authenticity, or cave in everything he believed so painstakingly to nurture? Time felt suspended as he prepared himself for the inevitable encounter. The moment of truth lurked just on the horizon, and Joe's heart raced with both dread and determination. Tomorrow he would uncover the truths that had dogged him ever since their paths crossed. The sun would reveal everything, and he would finally discover what price lay hidden behind the promise. The dawn broke with an eerie stillness that settled over the farm like a heavy fog. Joe stood on the porch, his eyes trained on the horizon as the sun crested, casting a golden glow over the fields. He felt an odd mix of trepidation and resolve. Today was a dance with destiny, one that could lead to either salvation or ruin. After a quick breakfast, he dressed with intention, choosing clothing that spoke of his labor, a rough-hewn shirt and well-worn jeans. Each thread seemed to vibrate with the legacy of his ancestors, reminding him that hard work was the backbone of success. Today, his resolve to maintain this heritage would be tested. With every step towards the designated meeting place, he wrestled with his thoughts. Did he truly have a plan, or was he merely stumbling into the confrontation? The stranger's face, cloaked in mystery, haunted him. He envisioned him as some dark omen standing against all that he had fought for. Would the man's hidden truth shroud Joe's vision further, or illuminate the path ahead? As he approached the meeting site, a gnarled tree framed the landscape, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Joe could feel the cool breeze wrapping around him, almost as if nature itself sensed his vulnerability. He took a moment to gather his breath, centering his mind. Today was not just about survival. It was about unveiling the truth of his own heart, about asserting the integrity he desperately clung to. Minutes later, he spotted the old man leaning against the tree, his silhouette stark against the glowing field. The stranger's eyes, sharp and piercing, met Joe's with a knowing gaze, as if the man had patiently awaited this day for ages. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken understanding that circled them like a silent predator. "Joe," the stranger greeted, his voice smooth but layered with undertones. "I see you've decided to join me." "Let's not waste time with pleasantries," Joe shot back, surprising even himself with the fierceness of his retort. I need to know the truth about what you gave me. What is this magic in those seeds? What's the price?" The old man chuckled softly, a sound that echoed strangely in the silent field, as if it fell upon an audience of phantoms. "Ah, the price," he replied, his tone devoid of any urgency. "Know this, every blessing comes accompanied by a burden. These seeds do not merely grow, they transform." "What do you mean?" Joe pressed, his heart pounding. Here was the moment, the confrontation that could either shatter his hopes or rebuild them anew. "The seeds will yield abundance, but be cautious," the old man continued, narrowing his eyes. "They will also expose the shadows you carry, a test of your heart. Only the truly deserving will thrive." Joe's stomach knotted with dread. He had anticipated wealth, even prosperity, but this notion of personal transformation struck a nerve. He had worked tirelessly to keep his flaws hidden. Yet here was a stranger promising exposure instead of concealment. "I don't want illusions or games," Joe replied, his voice a low rumble of determination. "I want a chance to nurture my legacy with honesty." "Then you must confront what you fear most." The man's intensity lanced through Joe, and for the first time he felt genuine fear creep into his veins. Could he really confront the parts of himself he had long avoided? The insecurities, the doubts, the weight of expectations? This journey was not just about overcoming external challenges. It was a battle within, an internal growth spurred by the relentless push to strive for the integrity he cherished. As Joe stood grappling with this profound revelation, something shifted within him. He felt a deeper sense of purpose unfurl, igniting a fire for action. Today would be the beginning, not just of his relationship with the seeds, but of a confrontation with himself. "Fine," he declared, finally finding his voice. "If this is the path, then I choose to walk it." The stranger smiled, an enigmatic glint lighting up his eyes. "You will soon see how the seeds grow into more than crops. You will witness the depths of your own soul." With that, the sun rose higher, illuminating the path ahead, both terrifying and exhilarating. Yet something still loomed, a new question taking shape in his mind. How would he change in the process, and would he be prepared for the transformation? As he turned to leave, he felt the weight of uncertainty press against him. The journey ahead demanded everything, and indecision marred the horizon. Would he be able to face the shadows lurking in the depths of his heart? Tomorrow, he would begin to unearth those hidden truths. He could almost hear the seeds whispering to him, eager to share their knowledge. But first, he had to unearth himself. In the quiet of the moment, Joe realized he was on the threshold of change, both terrifying and potentially enlightening. The price would be revealed soon enough, but it came with the heavy implication of self-discovery. Would he find the strength to confront the darkest corners of his being, or would he falter yet again in the face of his own truth? The morning light painted the farm in a soft glow, yet inside, Joe felt a storm brewing. He had set a course towards unveiling his own truth, but the shadows of self-doubt still clung tightly to him. Each step back towards the house felt laden with unacknowledged fears. The journey ahead promised transformation, but in what direction? Would he emerge stronger, or would the confrontation with himself reveal an identity he feared to be true? He walked through the kitchen, the familiar aromas of coffee and toast providing a temporary refuge from his spiraling thoughts. His hands moved almost mechanically as he prepared a simple breakfast, but his mind was miles away, caught in the web of possibilities. The seeds, the old man's prophecy of exposure, they echoed in his mind like a chant meant to awaken a restless soul. After breakfast, Joe stood at the edge of the field. The soil lay barren, a stark contrast to what he envisioned after planting those seeds. The unyielding earth held its secrets close, much like he did. As he focused on the empty plot, the promise of growth twisted into an unsettling challenge. He questioned whether he possessed the inner strength to confront the fragile parts of himself, the failures, the hidden insecurities, and the dreams that had often slipped through his fingers. This time, he wouldn't rely on the skills of toil alone. There had to be more than just labor. He remembered the old man's words, "The seeds will expose the shadows you carry." Determination surged within him alongside trepidation. He would have to dig deeper, both into the soil and his own soul. Joe knelt down, running his fingers through the cool earth. The feeling connected him, a reminder of where he came from. the lineage of hard workers who toiled and sweated, their legacies tightly interwoven with the land. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind, cautioning him about the values of integrity versus profit. Would he sell out in pursuit of a dream? Would he sacrifice authenticity for mere financial stability? He was torn between the tangible rewards of a harvest and the intangible richness of personal truth. As he planted the first seed, he felt a pulse of hope mixed with anxiety. What would each seed draw from the earth, and what truths would they coax from within? Would nurturing these seeds also force him to confront who he truly was? With each seed he pressed into the ground, visions of his life danced before him, moments of pride marred by regret, victories overshadowed by doubts. He questioned whether he could rise to the occasion, whether he could emerge from the depths of his insecurities unscathed. More significantly, would he still be able to stand proud among the strong legacy built by those before him? After finishing the row, Joe wiped the sweat from his brow and sat back on his heels. Exhaustion beckoned him, yet a flicker of clarity ignited in his heart. The fear of failure could no longer anchor him. Instead, it would be the catalyst for his growth. He realized the journey would not simply be about nurturing crops, but also about nurturing himself. As night fell, darkness cloaked the fields, concealing the potential life beneath the surface. That thought reassured him. Just as the seeds lay dormant, waiting for the right conditions to unfurl, so too did he. His transformation had begun, but at what cost? He hadn't spoken with the stranger since their last encounter, but the man's wisdom settled into the back of his mind, a reminder that true abundance would only manifest after acknowledging hidden sorrows. Joe had to decide if he would embrace this challenge or let it consume him. That night, as he lay in bed, the weight of understanding pressed down on him. Would he have the fortitude to face what lay ahead? Determined to advance, he closed his eyes, pulling from within the courage he needed. Tomorrow would mark not just a new day for his crops, but an awakening of his spirit. In the early hours, a question nagged at him, a somber premonition. Would he find liberation or despair in the awakening shadows of his soul? The answers were buried deep, and he could almost sense the seeds whispering promises of revelation. What awaited him on this journey of introspection would test not only his farming prowess, but the very fabric of who he believed himself to be. Would he emerge as the farmer he had always aspired to be, or would the process unravel him further? The sun rose timidly the next morning, as if it too was hesitant to reveal the truth of the day. Joe sat on the edge of his bed, unable to shake the weight of yesterday's revelations. He felt the soft rumble of the world waking up around him, yet within, he remained in a state of tumult. The seeds buried in his field were more than mere crops. They were a mirror reflecting the fragmented parts of himself that he had long kept hidden. He walked through the house, now shrouded in a heavy silence. Each room whispered echoes of his past, moments of laughter, arguments, and dreams unfulfilled. The walls seemed to close in, and for a fleeting moment he felt a tinge of claustrophobia. What if he couldn't confront the shadows? The fields awaited him, an expanse of opportunity tinged with uncertainty. As he stood at the threshold, he sensed something shift within him. This was his moment. His battlefield where he could cultivate more than just his land, he could cultivate himself. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Joe positioned himself at the empty plot, kneeling down, feeling the cool moistness of the soil in his palms. Placing the next seed into the ground felt like an act of rebellion against his self-doubt. The deeper he planted, the more he realized he was unearthing fragments of his history. Painful failures, lost love, dreams that had never seen light. As the sun climbed higher, he recalled the old man's face, a stranger, yet a guide, who had hinted at the potent possibilities hidden within the seeds. Had he truly understood the measure of his own identity, or was he merely skimming the surface? Joe grasped a handful of soil tightly, grounding himself. He had to confront the truth that each seed might expose something he wasn't ready to face. His determination sharpened as he began to plant row after row, each action becoming rhythmic, almost meditative. With each seed he pressed into the ground, he shared with it a story of himself, a childhood fear, a lost friendship, an unfulfilled ambition. The act of planting became like a confession, a release of the burdens that had stifled him for far too long. But then a new fear crept in, one he had to grapple with amid the humble labor. What if the seeds knew the darkest secrets within him? What if they turned out twisted and bitter, reflecting not beauty but shame? Joe paused, his breath hitching at the thought. Could he bear to see the ugly truths alongside the potential growth? A deeper spirit of resilience stirred within him. He began to understand. His willingness to expose himself to the elements, the winds of uncertainty, and the floods of regret would define not just his harvest, but also the man he was becoming. As he finished planting the last seed, his heart raced with anticipation. Would they blossom into something new? A gentle wind brushed against him, igniting a flicker of hope. This wasn't just about the land. It was about sowing the strength to embrace all parts of himself, even those long buried. He stood back, surveying his work, feeling both fragile and empowered. The seeds beneath him trembled with the essence of his truths. They promised to unearth what he had hidden for far too long. If only he could respond to their awakening. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke his reverie, and Joe turned to see the familiar silhouette approaching. The stranger. His heart sank and fluttered at once. The man took slow, measured steps towards Joe, and this time he seemed different, more resolute, almost as if he too carried the weight of truths unspoken. "The time had come to face your shadows," the stranger said, his voice deep and resonant. Joe felt a rush of adrenaline at the challenge embedded in those words. Would he now have to confront not only himself but also the stranger's intentions? The seeds were only the beginning, the real cultivation awaited. Joe's heart raced, each thump echoing the weight of the stranger's words. As the man approached, his posture exuded an unsettling certainty, like a tightrope walker comfortable with the precariousness of his path. Joe bit down deep inside, grappling with the tumult of anticipation and trepidation. "Why did you come back?" Joe questioned, the tension in his voice more a plea than an accusation. The stranger paused, scrutinizing Joe with an intensity that twisted the air around them. "Because the soil has stories to tell," he replied softly, his gaze piercing through to the depths of Joe's unease. "Those seeds you planted will bring forth more than just crops. They are conduits to your past, to the shadows you've been hesitant to confront." A chill enveloped Joe, as if the atmosphere thickened with the weight of unspoken truths. He instinctively took a step back, feeling the rawness of vulnerability creeping in. "What if those truths are unbearable?" he shot back, his voice edging toward despair. The stranger's steady demeanor didn't waver. "You misunderstand the nature of shadows. They are not inherently dark. Some hold the light of understanding." Joe clenched his fists, frustration threatening to spill over. "Easier said than done," he muttered, grappling with the burden of his history, the stain of regrets and mistakes that clung tightly to him. "It's true," the stranger continued, his tone now laced with empathy. "But you've sown the first seeds. You must now cultivate the courage to see what they yield. Every harvest demands a season of growth, and growth requires facing the storms." His words struck a chord, resonating with a fearful realization. Was he ready to unearth the vulnerability attached to those seeds? Every ounce of logical behavior urged him to retreat into the familiar cocoon of silence and denial. But a flicker of resolve sparked, a determination to challenge the shadows rather than yield to them. "What's my next step?" Joe finally asked, frustration giving way to desperation. "You must nurture the garden of your mind, water it with honesty. Ask yourself, what do those seeds represent?" The stranger's eyes held a depth that seemed to penetrate Joe's carefully constructed facade. As the sun started its descent in the sky, Joe felt a wave of emotional clarity wash over him. The seeds were not just reflections of brokenness, they signified the potential for healing. Tonight, he would confront the memories alongside the stranger. He would listen to the whispers in the soil. "Will you join me in this exploration?" Joe offered, the words escaping his mouth before he could fully process them. The stranger nodded, the corner of his lips twitching into a knowing smile. The shadows reveal themselves best in companionship. As they set out to the freshly sown fields, a tension hummed in the air, a strange mingling of apprehension and hope. Joe wasn't merely stepping into the night. He was plunging into the heart of his own darkness to rediscover what lay dormant within him. Yet, even as resolve bloomed, another gnawing fear crept in. What if the shadows were unforgiving? What if he unearthed more pain than he could bear? With each step toward the field, Joe felt the veil lift slightly, revealing the contours of a path he had long evaded. The whispers in his mind fell silent, making room for a new anticipation. But just as he felt himself approach a clarity he hadn't anticipated, the stranger halted, his body tense. "There's more to uncover tonight. Some truths may lead to unexpected revelations." Joe paused, curiosity mingled with foreboding. "What do you mean?" The glint in the stranger's eyes expanded, shadowed by a mystery that promised to deepen Joe's exploration. "Not all shadows are yours to face alone, for some are entwined in others." That unsettling statement hung heavy in the air between them, igniting the coals of both apprehension and intrigue as they continued their journey into the unknown. Joe's breath caught in his throat as they stepped further into the field, moonlight casting an ethereal glow over the freshly turned earth. Each step felt significant, heavy with the unearthing of not just soil, but truths long buried. The stranger's cryptic words echoed in his mind, ushering in a wave of questions. What shadows belonged to him? What shadows belonged to others? An inner turmoil churned. The anticipation of diving into this exploration was met with an instinctual fear of what repercussions it might hold. As the stranger turned his gaze back to Joe, the unwavering calm in his eyes provided a strange comfort. Joe found himself wondering if this man had faced his ghosts, if he had unburdened himself in similar fields of introspection. "What if I find out things that I can't bear?" Joe asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The admission itself felt like a weight lifted. The stranger took a moment, as if savoring the gravity of the inquiry. "What you can't bear may show you your strength, or what led you to conceal it in the first place." The concept resonated deep within Joe. Perhaps he had hidden too much, his failures, his fears, the echoes of a childhood that had left scars. This was more than just a physical harvest, it was a chance to cultivate resilience. But would he have the guts to face whatever lay ahead? "Let's begin," the stranger urged, and as he knelt beside a patch of earth, his movements were deliberate and serene, a sharp contrast to the storm raging within Joe. The stranger reached into the soil and plucked a seedling, holding it up as if it were a precious artifact. "This," he said, "is your first lesson. Each seed represents a piece of you, a memory, an experience, a connection to who you are." As he spoke, Joe felt his heartbeat synchronize with the unfolding ritual. The stranger continued, pulling more seedlings from the earth, each with a story looming over them, waiting to be told. One for fear, another for regret, a third for hope. With each seed, Joe felt a weight settle in the pit of his stomach, recognition mixed with dread. "Now let's plant them back," the stranger said, his voice gentle yet firm. "You need to nurture them, let them grow, but first, you must acknowledge them." Joe hesitated, a cascade of doubt washing over him. What if the act of acknowledgement meant flooring his entire existence? Each seed, from the bitterness of a lost dream to the glimmer of an unfostering ambition, was intertwined with emotions he had long evaded. As if reading his mind, the stranger offered a steady gaze. "You must confront the storms, Joe. They are part of the process. Without turbulence, growth is impossible. What will you do with your seeds?" The reality of his choices loomed like a thundercloud over him. Joe understood that acknowledging these seeds required bravery, facing his fears that had taken root and grown into something larger than life. As the stranger awaited his response, Joe felt a fire ignite within. "I will not run away," he declared, commitment lacing his words. "I will nurture them, no matter how painful." The stranger smiled faintly, pleased. "That's a powerful beginning. From acknowledgement sprouts the potential for healing." Yet just as resolve began to bloom, a sudden rustle disrupted the serenity of their moment. Joe's heartbeat quickened again as he recognized a figure creeping through the shadows of the field. It was familiar, sending a chill down his spine. "Joe!" a soft voice called out, echoing his worst fears. The stranger tensed beside him. Who was this new intruder? And how would this unexpected confrontation play into Joe's journey to face his own truths? As dread clashed with determination, Joe felt every part of him wrestle with vulnerability. The night was far from over, and the shadows were about to reveal more than he had ever anticipated. Joe's heart raced as the voice pierced the night air, resonating deep within his core. He recognized the tone, laced with uncertainty and concern. The figure emerged from the darkness, illuminated by the silvery moonlight. Lena, his estranged sister. Her presence evoked a deluge of emotions he had thought he had buried, emotions he had meticulously crafted walls to keep at bay. Lena, he breathed, unsure whether to embrace her or flee from the memories she conjured. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, her eyes searching his face for answers that he feared were hidden even from himself. The stranger beside him remained silent, allowing the tension in the air to thicken. "Just thinking," he replied, hoping his words wouldn't betray the tumult beneath the surface. "Thinking?" Her brow furrowed, skepticism intertwining with a hint of hope. "Are you really? Or is this yet another way for you to hide?" Those words struck Joe harder than any physical blow. Did she see him as he truly was? Someone who oscillated between confronting his past and falling into the abyss of avoidance? He felt the weight of the seedlings in his mind, each one representing a part of him he had yet to confront. "I'm trying to understand," he admitted, the admission itself feeling raw and exposed. Lena took a tentative step closer, brushing her fingers through the tall grass as if anchoring herself to the moment. "I thought maybe you could use some help." The thought of vulnerability overwhelmed him. How could he allow her back into his life when he felt unpatchable fissures crisscrossing his own being? But what if at that moment the narrative shifted? What if acknowledgement of his seeds could lead to reconciliation? "You don't know what I'm dealing with," Joe said, frustration threaded through his voice. "I know more than you think," she replied, her tone steady. "I've battled my own demons, but running away, Joe, doesn't fix anything." In that moment, her courage reignited something within him, a flicker of determination wrapped in his fears. He thought back to the stranger who had urged him toward acknowledgement and healing. Maybe this was the confrontation he needed. I'm trying," he said, his voice trembling, torn between the desire to share his journey and the remnants of his isolation. Lena softened, her expression shifting from concern to understanding. "I'm here for you. We can face this together." Joe's resolve wavered as he looked at her, feeling the bonds of past disappointment and unresolved hurt challenging his every instinct. Would reaching out to her mean admitting defeat or embracing a fresh start? As he wrestled with that question, he could feel the stranger's unwavering presence beside him. "Together?" Joe echoed, testing the word on his tongue, feeling the gravity behind the invitation that it held. "Yes, together," she affirmed, a quiet strength in her resolve. "I want us to look at the seeds we've both buried, the ones we've kept hidden." A gust of wind rustled through the field, carrying with it the whispers of things left unsaid. Joe faced the stranger, who seemed to nod subtly, signaling the possibility of shared healing. But the question hovered in his mind like a storm cloud. Was he truly prepared to dig into his past with Lena beside him? "Can we face them together?" he finally asked, vulnerability primed for growth. But even as he sought affirmation, he felt the fear clawing back, uncertainty threatening to overtake him once more. The truth enveloped him. Acknowledging seeds required consistent courage, not just fleeting moments of strength. As silence enveloped them, Joe recognized the crossroads he stood upon, emotions swirling in a tempest. The moment of truth was at hand, and with it lay the seeds of his past and the potential for newfound kinship. Just then, the stranger shifted slightly, bringing attention back to the earth at their feet. "You must decide, Joe. This is not just about wounds healed, it's about embracing growth." Forced between the specters of the past and the promise of reconciliation, Joe felt the weight of his decision ready to bear down upon him. "What happens if I can't?" he questioned, his voice nearly cracking under the strain. "You may find that your greatest challenge is also your greatest ally. What lies ahead is unknown." The stranger paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. "But it can be transformative." The air felt charged with potential and anticipation. the seedlings waiting to be planted resonating between them and urging Joe to brave the unknown. As the night deepened, Joe felt the ground shift beneath him. Was he ready to face not only his demons but those of the sister he had long ignored? With looming shadows and buried truths surrounding him, the kernel of courage began to take root as he prepared to confront the unfolding narrative of his life, one that might lead him into the light or deeper into darkness. The stranger's presence faded slightly, like an ethereal guide, and there, within the stillness of the field, Joe realized the next choice was his alone. Would fear bind him in chains, or would he step forward and plant the seeds of reconciliation with Lena? The tension of his decision echoed in the silence, waiting to be addressed. Joe stood frozen, caught in the quagmire of his emotions. Lena's words looped within him, igniting an inner conflict that raged like wildfire. It was now or never. He felt the enormity of the moment weigh down on his chest, pushing him toward a confrontation that both exhilarated and terrified him. "I don't want to hide anymore," he declared, almost as a whisper. It was less a statement of decision and more a raw expression of vulnerability, released into the air like a fragile balloon. Lena's gaze softened, but Joe could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, mirroring his. He considered what it would mean to peel back the layers of solitude he had built so carefully, only to reveal the tangled roots of regret and pain. Could he trust her again? Was he prepared to confront not just his wounds but the divides that had kept them apart? "I know we've let pain define our relationship," he attempted to articulate, his voice gaining strength. "But I want to change that." A deep breath steadied him. "Can we start by being honest? Right here, right now?" Lena stepped forward, the moon capturing the determination on her face. "There were times when I thought we might never find our way back, when I thought I'd lost you forever." The weight of her admission sliced through some of the tension. Joe found resonance in her words, a shared understanding of what had been lost amidst the chaos. The truth was, both their lives had been marred by the same fractures and regrets. "Well, the past won't change, but we can choose how it shapes our future," he said, his eyes locked on hers. The sentiment felt foreign yet achingly familiar. He hadn't intended to turn this encounter into a lesson in reconciliation, but clarity sharpened in the stillness around them. "And what if we mess it up again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but alive with the weight of their shared history. "Then we learn. We try again," Joe replied, a logical yet hopeful edge creeping into his tone. "It's time we stop expecting perfection from each other. We need to embrace this, flaws and all." Lena nodded, a flicker of gratitude illuminating her features. That glimmer cut through the fog of their shared past, suggesting that perhaps they could build something new from the ashes of what had been burned. Joe could feel his resolve hardening, spurred on by a burgeoning sense of accountability entwined with hope. The stranger's presence became palpable again, an encouraging force lingering just beyond their embrace. Joe turned his gaze to the ground, where they stood. The remnants of all that was unacknowledged lay dormant, waiting to be unearthed. The seeds of their past were indeed buried deep. "It's time to plant those seeds," he murmured, calling on the metaphor that had been pressed upon him but resonated wholly now. "Let's dig them up together." Joe paused, glancing at Lena, unsure how she'd respond. Her contemplative silence spoke volumes, a mixture of hesitation, acceptance, and an underlying sense of responsibility to make this work. As each moment passed, he realized the key wasn't just about facing their past. It was initiating this journey of healing as partners, forging ahead despite lingering doubts. "Let's make a pact," he proposed. "We acknowledge our wounds, but we also plant something new. A future that's not about our mistakes, but rather the choices we make moving forward." Lena considered this before a tentative smile broke across her face. "I can hold on to that," she agreed, the tension easing between them like the parting of a storm. But just as relief washed over him, an unsettling current swept back in. What if the past was too woven into their present? What if they couldn't navigate the uncertainties that waited around the corner? The air crackled with unspoken fears and possibilities. Joe felt new seeds stirring within him, a burgeoning acknowledgement that change was arduous but essential for growth. As Luna cast a gentle glow over the landscape, Joe's contemplation deepened. They were now standing on the precipice of renewal, but the road ahead was rife with challenges. Would the commitment to redefine their relationship hold strong in the face of adversity? As that thought enveloped him, the wind shifted, stirring wildflowers at their feet, a tangible sign of life beneath the soil waiting to bloom. With a deep breath, Joe understood. The journey had just begun, and the first steps towards healing lay ahead, submerging them both into muddy but fertile ground. Can we cultivate something beautiful? He wondered aloud, vulnerability surfacing anew. But even as he spoke, an unfamiliar tension settled in his gut, urging him to question if this might just be the calm before a different storm. What hidden truths might surface as they dug deeper? The dawn broke with a golden hue, illuminating the field where Joe stood with Lena, the morning air crisp with possibility. The tension that lingered from the night before had transformed into a charged excitement. They were moving forward together, finally ready to unearth buried truths. "Are you ready?" Joe asked, his heart thumping in rhythm with the anticipation swirling between them. He could sense the weight of their past, the pain, regrets, and misunderstandings, and with that awareness came a sense of liberation. They were about to face their history, not as enemies but as allies. Lena met his gaze, determination reflecting in her eyes. "Yes, let's do this." They knelt together at the edge of the field, hands in the earth, ready to plant not just seeds but their intentions for healing and renewal. As they began to dig, memories surfaced like forgotten fragments of their childhood. "I remember when we used to play here," Lena said, chuckling softly, her hands trembling against the soil. Joe could not help but join her laughter, even as the sweet memory was intertwined with a hint of sadness. "Yes," he replied, a nostalgic smile crossing his lips. "We thought we'd always be inseparable." "That changed when life happened," she acknowledged, a shadow crossing her visage. "We let the distance grow." That acknowledgement struck Joe with an undeniable truth. The chasm had widened, not just because of circumstances but due to their own choices, a lesson buried deep within both of them. "But now," he pointed out, "we have the chance to change course." With each scoop of soil that sifted through their fingers, they unearthed more than memories. Joe recalled his struggles with insecurities in running the farm, the fear of never measuring up to his forefathers. "I carried that weight," he admitted, vulnerability laced in his voice. "And I didn't know how to share it with you." Lena paused, meeting his gaze with understanding. "I didn't realize how much you were hurting. I kept thinking it was all about me." "No more hiding," Joe declared bravely. Each admission further established their connection. In their shared vulnerability, they were transforming remorse into opportunity for deeper understanding. They could not erase their past, but the prospect of facing it together seemed increasingly valuable. As they continued to plant metaphorical seeds of honesty, they began to speak of their failures, the lost opportunities, the misunderstandings, and the years apart. Each word felt like a fulfillment of the promise they had made to each other, a commitment to nurture not only the crops but the bonds they had neglected. "Fear held me back for too long," Joe confessed gently. "But today, I choose to be better." With each seed they planted, the soil transformed into a representation of their journey of healing. Joe thought about the stranger. The initial push towards self-reflection was now proving its worth. He could feel a renewed sense of purpose unfurling in his heart, distinct from the relentless anxiety of his farming failures that had once consumed him. "Growing these seeds isn't just about harvesting crops, but nurturing our ability to grow together," Lena insisted, the realization igniting a spark of clarity in both of them. After they finished planting, they stood as the sun crested higher, presenting a vibrant landscape of hope and possibility. In that illuminating moment, the world around them bloomed with potential, a metaphor for what lay before them. "Together, we can tend to these seeds and our shared history," Joe affirmed, emotion tinging his voice. "We'll cultivate a future built on honesty, support, and accountability." Lena nodded, a smile brightening her features. "That's a promise I can keep." With those words, something shifted inside Joe. Confidence surged through him, a sensation he had not embraced in years. The shadows that once loomed over him faded, gradually replaced by a sense of belonging that transcended fear. As they turned away from the field, ready to tackle the challenges ahead, Joe felt an exhilarating sense of empowerment. They were no longer shackled by their past. They were stepping forward, resolute in creating a future rooted in growth. The transformation was not just personal, it had ignited a causal flame between them, facilitating a rich dialogue about vulnerability, accountability, and trust. Joe no longer felt like a failure. He had emerged as someone who could face challenges head-on, knowing that true fulfillment stemmed from both self-acceptance and interpersonal reconciliation. With hope in his heart and a sense of camaraderie alongside Lena, he could now embrace the legacy of his family, not as a burden, but as an opportunity to steer their collective future toward prosperity. "Let's nurture these seeds together, just like we nurture each other," Joe concluded as they walked back toward the house. They were not just cultivating crops, they were laying the foundation for a redefined relationship, a partnership built not on isolation but on shared strength. And for the first time in a long while, Joe felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Now is your chance to be part of this transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm that helps us share these incredible tales. Comment your thoughts and reactions about this powerful ending and explore where the story might go next. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this story of overcoming adversity. Don't wait even one more second to share the inspiration.